ping-pong back and forth. Some attorneys have said it's not worth the paper it's written on, but other people say, well, at least it adds another layer of protection to the agreements that you have. So it releases you, in theory, from anything that happens on your property in terms of you have notified that person that's coming on your property, here are the risks involved. But it does not protect you from a lawsuit. So, you know, even though you have this release statement, you could be sued and you could lose. But on the other hand, if you have it, it's another piece of evidence that shows that indeed you did take certain precautions when you allowed people on your land. There is a recreational statute, which Mr. Skaggs, I was interested in hearing what he said about it. There's apparently, you know, whether its purpose, the reason the Arkansas State Legislature made this law was to let more people get on private land and recreate on it and reduce, in a sense, somewhat limit the landowner's liability. But unfortunately, whether that actually happens, whether it can actually be something that protects you is still a big question mark. What the Arkansas Recreational Use Statute says that anyone invited can't assume that your land is safe, that landowners don't assume a responsibility for injuries to the persons or property caused by the user, when the user is the one that's causing these issues. Liability not incurred for natural or artificial conditions, structures, or personal property on the land. If a fee is charged, that's when it becomes really tricky, because if a fee is charged, immunity from liability, you know, it may be affected, so it may not work if you're charging a fee for it. So, and as Mr. Skaggs said, there may be now some cases that indicate that, you know, if you're just really negligent, this law is not going to protect you. And so, again, we'll have some attorneys here that will address this in more thorough detail after a while. The financial feasibility of your operation is something important to consider. You know, it sounds pretty obvious, but sometimes people don't think of all the different things that are involved in this kind of operation in terms of what do you need to get started, what are the operating costs or the ongoing expenses you're going to have. And there's some really great people that can help you determine that. The U.S. Small Business Administration has a website. There's enterprise budgets that you can develop. If you have a farming operation, we have people at the university here that can help you develop plans associated with that farming operation, including your wildlife enterprise and your agritourism enterprise. But you really do need to think about this. It could be that you might decide after you do something like this that maybe a wildlife enterprise is not for you, and that's great too, because that way you haven't lost any money out of the deal. So the planning can be really helpful in that regard, help you decide if this is something you want to do. In terms of the marketing, some people now are using all kinds of marketing ways out there, you know, with the social media, the way it is nowadays. You could target people that you want to attract. If you have land that's way out in the country, way out in the rural area of the state, you target it to people who really like to get away from it all, people who don't want to don't want to have access to their cell phones, those types of things. If you have a marketing strategy where you're closer to an urban area, you could say, hey, we're close to Little Rock. If you're bringing your family, maybe your family would like to go shopping while you are out hunting. Those kinds of things that can take place so that you can leverage the kinds of things that you have around you and use it in your marketing strategy. You know, sometimes knowing your competition can be really helpful in this case. If you see someone that's marketing with something like what you're interested in doing, go out, pay the money, go to their enterprise, see what they're doing, see what they like, see what you like, see what you don't like, and determine your price. Can give you, you know, that might help you determine your price. One person had told me too that, you know, if you say that you're coming out to your land and you're only charging them, you know, the minimal amount that you see everyone else charging, that's a signal to them, well, this deer hunt's probably not going to be that great because they're only charging us this amount. So make sure that your price is signaling to the customer exactly what the value is of the enterprise that you're offering. So there's a whole lot of things to consider there in marketing, and yet this gentleman that I talked about that had the quail operation, the way he did his marketing was basically word of mouth and a sign next to the road. that had his phone number on it, and that was it. That's all he wanted. He had his dairy operation, he had other things going on, and so that's all the marketing that he wanted to do. So marketing plans can be anything from very word of mouth all the way up to getting a celebrity endorsement type of thing. Here's this gentleman's sign right here. That's all he has. Word of mouth is what he wants. You can do direct marketing, you can do media advertisements. Another gentleman here in Arkansas, he enjoys going to trade shows, and he meets clients that way. He makes a family vacation out of it. His whole family goes to, for example, the Illinois Wildlife Expo, and they set up a booth there, and they spend the weekend there talking to people and telling them about what they're offering in Arkansas. And again, I mentioned celebrity endorsements, depending on how you want to go with it. Then, perhaps the most important thing out of this whole talk is that you have to be a people person. And I know some people get to the point where they say, I really don't like that idea of having strangers on my land. I like the idea of making money, but I really don't want people messing with my stuff. Well, that's going to be a problem because you really do need to have to enjoy working with people, being comfortable with people, getting to know people. This particular guy who went to the trade shows, whenever you come to his enterprise, he'd give you a sheet of paper with a form that has your name, address, when your birthday is, all kinds of information. And so he would keep that up to date. When your birthday came around, he might send you a birthday card. Or they met one family that they were having a child. And so when they knew that this woman had given birth, they sent flowers to the hospital. So they really got to know their clients. They became a part of their family. And so people management can be a very important part of your business operation. So we've talked about all these different things here about the business considerations, and we'll just briefly mention some resource management opportunities for you to consider before we wrap this up. In terms of, again, if you're going to have a good wildlife enterprise and you're going to attract the wildlife there, you need to do some habitat practices. Production of mast, or in other words, nut-producing trees, is important typically. In a lot of the advertisements that I saw from Louisiana, for example, they mentioned the percent of pine and the percent of mast, or acorn-producing trees, on their property as an indication as to how they were enticing people to pay money for the wildlife enterprise. So that can be that's an important feature. The protection and reforestation of the riparian corridors. Wildlife like to use those stream bank areas, wetland areas. You can do some strip disking and some mowing to promote some of the early successional habitat. We've already had a talk about the timber, and so if you can do some thinnings. I know some people say, well, clear cutting, forest management practices are bad for wildlife, and that's not true. There are things that you can do to dramatically improve your forest and your overall habitat strategies by following some forest management practices. And people who are in forestry and wildlife, we love to burn things because when you burn a forested area, it really causes a green up of growth that really can benefit wildlife. Has a number of other benefits as well. So prescribed burning is something that we highly encourage. And if you have a farm, then you might want to leave some field borders or some buffer strips there and let some of that crop that you have go for the wildlife. There's a number of places that you can get financial assistance for doing these things. So not only can you make money on the people coming on your property, but you can also get some cost share of money for putting out the habitat for the wildlife. Some of these farm bill programs are in a state of flux right now. Currently, there's a conservation reserve program that has something that's called continuous CRP, so you can sign up for it anytime. You do need to go to your Farm Service Agency office or your Natural Resource Conservation Service office in your area. Talk to that person there and find out what kind of these programs are available for you. The Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program, the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, EQIP program, and there's also a program that's been underutilized in Arkansas so far. It's called State Acres for Wildlife Enhancement, or the SAFE program. And just recently I saw some numbers on that, and there's a number of acres that they have open that no one's applied for. And so there's some money out there that's available to help cost share some of these practices that we mentioned. In terms of your wildlife populations that you have, I mean, we can talk all day about deer management, but really you have to have several thousand acres in order adequately managed for deer. If you have 40 acres or 150 acres, you can put out some food plots, you can do some improvements to your property, but really all you're doing is attracting the wildlife to that area. In terms of population management or improving herd health, those kinds of things, you need a lot of acres to manage for deer. Considering waterfowl and doves, they do need rest areas, so you might have some parts of your land that you hunt, some parts of your land that you leave as rest areas. That can be a part of your wildlife management plan, as a part of your wildlife enterprise plan. If they have those rest areas, they're more likely to come, and you're more likely to have success on those areas where you're hunting. Again, I mentioned it before, keeping records on what you have on your property can be very beneficial. Not only the Boone and Crockett score for your deer, but if you have different kinds of songbirds that are coming out there that can be one of those lifer experiences, you need to keep track of those as well. Have someone, a birder, someone from an Audubon chapter, someone who knows birds come out to your property and help you do that kind of inventory of your property. If you're having people come out fishing, keep records of what they're catching, hunting, keep records so that you can collect some information about what's happening on your property and the wildlife that's out there. There's a number of internet resources. The two that I'd like to talk to you about, one of them is called the Developing a Wildlife Enterprise, Is It For You? And you can find that at www.forestandrange.org. And it talks about different steps to consider in your enterprise. And it also has a tab there that's called Meet Enterprise Managers. And two of the gentlemen that I talked about, their interviews are on that website. And you can hear more about how, for example, the Farm Bill program is utilized by some of these enterprise managers that are on that website. Another great spot is the Natural Resource Enterprise program at Mississippi State University. There's a staff there that this is totally all they do is wildlife or natural resource enterprises. They totally focus on that at Mississippi. They have people that go out to the field and meet with landowners, and they have a really good website that has a lot of the details for the information that we've talked about here. And so I know you had a question earlier on, Bob. Is there any other questions that you might have?
Do you have information on that SAFE program?
I don't personally, but if you go to your NRCS or your Farm Service Agency person, what they do is they designate areas. They have timber, grassland, and wetland, and they have so many acres that are available in each one of those categories, and they're trying to encourage wildlife. And they had several different categories that they were looking for, and one of them was to help improve the wildlife populations for community development, and it sounded like it would fit right under wildlife enterprises in terms of helping get some more funds to the communities, and that would fall under that. And so you need to talk with them and figure out for your area what kind of landholding qualifies for that SAFE program. And
I hadn't really heard anything about that. I think I might have just saw just one little article or something, but I hadn't really looked into that one.
I don't believe they have promoted as much as they could have. Probably, they're busy folks. They have all these other programs going on, and this is a relatively new program, so they probably just haven't gotten the word out as much.
Well, I know their private lands biologists are spread pretty thin, and I'm sure that's just one more thing falls on their back.
Well, and it takes a learning curve too. Private lands biologists, as you said, from Arkansas Game and Fish, they're out there meeting landowners, and a new program comes up, and all of us have to learn what that new program is about, and sometimes it takes a while. It's my understanding that there's actually, of all things, more federal money coming for the SAFE program, because I guess people haven't used it as much in other states, and so they're now saying there's some more acres out there, and so that's why it came up on my radar.
Well, I think I'll just do a search on the Game and Fish website for that, see what pops up.
And where I found it was with, with the USDA website that talked about SAFE.
Well, I may check with David Long. I bet you he'll know.
He definitely knows. He wrote the contract for Arkansas to get the SAFE program, so he definitely knows.